Hello, I'm Longford writer Alan McMonigal, and today I'm talking to Lorne Patterson, who has just published his second novel, and it's called Bad Blood. Congratulations, Lorne, on the publication. It's quite an accomplishment, actually. It was the first thing I want to say to you in these hard-hitting times, especially to publish a book, let alone something that dwells firmly and so unflinchingly within the margins of society. I don't know if you wanted to just offer any introductory comments on that.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I was hugely surprised when it was accepted for publication. I still haven't got over this surprise, but I'm delighted it's out there.
Yeah, I'm always curious about this. I mean, just from purely from one writer to another. Like, how did it come together? I mean, did it take you long to write it? Were there many drafts? Were you long submitting to publishers? How many did you submit to? And at what stage did Words on the Street, your publisher, eventually come on board? Were there many in the queue before that? Had you been submitting to many different publishers yourself?
With the book itself took 10 years to write.
Wow.
It's 2 years to put the bones of it together, but the rest of the time was revisiting it.
Yeah.
Definitely not an obsessive trait there.
So it was like 2 years to give you like an idea for the shape and the structure, the spine of the thing, if you like.
Yeah.
And then
just trying to get it right to where it felt right and where I was happy with it.
Yeah.
That took a long time.
Yeah. And like, we're plunged into this psychiatric ward of lost souls and shock therapies, and like the atmosphere, it's unrelenting. It's very claustrophobic. I found myself, and the diagnoses, there's a parade of them. It's like a minefield of everything that can and will and does occur. But we're here we're living with mentally unwell people, if you like, which it's very often it's an unseen illness. It's invisible, and be it unseen or hidden, if you like. And your own work as a psychiatric nurse, obviously this has informed your work a lot.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Hugely. As I say, I still am a psychiatric nurse, but I used to work in environments like that, and so many stories there, and I was always telling them anyway.
Yeah.
To other people, and I knew I wanted to put it down into writing to make a written story out of that time, but it was just hard labour. There's the disciplined writing you do, and then there's those rarer times when the muse is in your head.
That's right.
And you can't get the words out fast enough. But this was definitely the first of those.
Yeah, there are quite a number of. It's quite a cast of characters, actually. You offer in this book, but obviously the one I'm most interested in is the book's narrator, Lenny, aka the Professor, if you like. I'm really curious. Where did he come from? Who do you think he is, and what has happened that has Lenny found himself where he is, if you like, at the beginning of the book.
He actually was probably a couple of nurses that I used to know, but
it's like a compound character.
Yeah, not everyone survives the nursing environment, and there's ones who were just appalled by the system that they found themselves in, and left the system, but caring, intelligent, driven people. So a couple of those people were in my head when I did it, but I didn't want to write it from the outside. So to me, Lenny was a patient.
Yeah.
whether he deserves to be a patient or not.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Yeah. He's quite a narrator, and the voice is very, very strong from the get-go, I thought. And you mentioned that there's the disciplined writing, which we all have to do. It's graft and chore and blood and sweat and gristle. And then there's the more, if you like, there's quite a lot of poetic flourish to this book as well, I noticed, which obviously the parts that arrive along with the muse, if you like. So that you got a nice. I thought there was quite an interesting balance there. You know,
Thank you.
It's for such an environment and a relentless atmosphere, because as I say, I mean there's I mean, I don't want to get into the technical terms and the conditions and the diagnoses that just keep coming in the work, and we're given a glossary at the end, which I'm sure any reader will find very useful, because it is quite interesting. I'm going to ask a question I was asked myself recently, actually, in connection with a story from my own stories. There seems to be an element of stigma when it comes to mental health in Ireland. I don't know if you would agree with that statement to begin with, but do you think fiction has a role to play in addressing this stigma?
Well, first of all, I agree absolutely that there still is a huge amount of stigma. Over my decades, it has lessened to a degree, but it hasn't lessened nearly enough. And it's not just in this country, in all countries, but it's still one of those issues that people would rather not talk about. Given a choice. The other part of that question is do writers have a role? And I think absolutely. For those who haven't got a voice, sometimes it's not even their own voice. We can articulate what is, what has been, and maybe to be a warning for what might be again if we don't do something about the many issues that are there that need to be addressed.
It's like we were saying just a couple of moments ago. It's mental illness. It's an invisible illness. I mean, it's unseen or hidden, and it can be the victims or the patients themselves that keep it hidden or keep it unseen, as well as maybe certain authorities, for want of a better word. But I always think that I mean, to a certain extent, I think all of us suffer from mental problems at some point. For some of us, for the most of us, actually, it's only short term. But I think for those unlucky few, it's longer term. And I think, I would agree. I do think that story and fiction can be very useful in depicting it. And I think that you mentioned the word voice there, and I think just to get inside a mind of somebody who feels his or herself teetering on the lip of things can be very instructive for the reader.
Well, if you think about totalitarianism, the best description we have of that is still George Orwell. And he gave us the language to encapsulate what that means. So if I can do even a small part of what he did in this area, I'd be delighted.
Well, I think he provided certainly more than a small part, Lorne. It's of course, this is your second book, which is the title of your first novel. That was published last year, am I right?
Last year, correct, yeah. By small independent publishers in America. Bad Blood was published here in Ireland, which I'm delighted to have one on the home front, but to be published at all, particularly at this time, is a wonderful experience, as I'm sure you know.
Of course, I know. I mean, obviously you work as well, how do you manage to find time for writing? Are you disciplined, or do you just, do you become ruthless as we have to be sometimes? Or do you wait for the muse that you've mentioned already?
I try to be disciplined. It doesn't always work out, but it works out to an extent that I'm writing on a constant basis. It might be a report that I have to do as opposed to creative writing, but it's still writing.
Yeah.
I've been lucky. The muse was there for my first book and for my next one, and then it's a case of just not sleeping too much and trying to catch up where possible.
Yeah,
and fill in.
And of course, I have to ask you, you've written short stories as well. Have you written many? 'Cause I know you were a runner-up in the prestigious Sean of Whalon short story contest some years back. Did that encourage you to dabble in that form?
It's encouraged me, but it didn't make me any more prolific, I'm afraid. I'm slow work when it comes to writing.
Yeah.
But as I don't have to rely on it for my living,
Yeah.
I don't have to generate X
Yeah.
number of pieces per year.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage to that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think the short story is a different animal altogether than the novel. A friend of mine has a formula. He reckons, the shorter the piece is, the longer it's going to take. So.
I'd subscribe to that point of view.
I'll just go back to Bad Blood for a moment as well. Another thing that struck me, I mean, obviously it's an unsettling read, not only for the subject matter and the blunt head-on style in which the story is told, but I think also because the reader finds himself rooting for characters that are Norman's circumstances. I mean, let's face it, he may be well advised to steer clear of. What do you think of that?
I hope my characters come across as real people.
Yeah.
I used words that patients used with me one time, in that we're not seen as real people.
Yeah.
Either they become one-dimensional, or they're not seen at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I hope I gave depth to them and their illnesses, even the ones who'd have traits that commonly would disapprove of.
Yeah.
At least become understandable.
Yeah.
Even the worst of the characters, that they're understandable in themselves, although they might be appalling as humans.
Well, I certainly think that's one of the achievements of this book, that we do find ourselves rooting for these characters, and for that alone, I think hats off. I'll just ask you one question to finish. Feel free to be as honest or as flippant or indeed withholding as you want. What exactly are the Kremlin rules, Lorne?
I can't even remember where I picked up that phrase, but I remember it as just the absolute ruthlessness as dictated by power.
Yeah.
It was tied in with Stalin's period
Of course.
of dictatorship,
Yeah.
but absolute amoral ruthlessness.
Yeah, and certainly a reference to that totalitarianism that you refer to. Yeah, it certainly is. I think it's a reference to that totalitarianism that you were referring to a few minutes ago.
I've got a feeling it came from a Russian writer, but it's in the distant past. I can't drag out his name.
Yeah. What's next for you?
I'm gonna take a break and move away from mental illness into witch hunts.
Oh yeah. Well, I can't wait for that. I'm sure the readers can't either. Lorne Patterson, thanks very much.
Thanks, Alan.